Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ozotech Marine.
Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. Happy New Year! I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. Well, today on the live stream, I welcome Aaron Dus from Aquaforest to the show. What's happening there, Aaron?
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah. It's like to have you on, man. So let me just give the down low on Aaron. Aaron brings a rather unique perspective into the hobby profession with a background in marine biology and almost 2 decades of international marketing strategy experience. He's found a way to tie his passion for reef keeping to his marketing expertise to help a new generation of aquarists discover what Aquaforest has to offer. He spent the last few years helping to elevate the position of Aquaforest in the U.S. market and recently helped broker the partnership between Aperture, which is the parent company of Bulk Reef Supply, and Aquaforest for U.S. distribution of Aquaforest Marine and Freshwater products. He is currently the EVP of U.S. Marketing Strategy for Aquaforest and a consultant at Ozotech Inc. But before we start chatting with Aaron, I want to thank the sponsors for the show, Bulk Reef Supply and Ozotech Marine. I really appreciate these companies supporting the show. And I also appreciate all you folks out there tuning in. Seems like there's a number of you that are joining us right now. Spread the word, hit that like button so more people can find the live stream. We've got over 40 people watching right now, only 7 likes. We gotta bump that number up there, right, Aaron?
Smash that like button, that's right.
Smash the like button. All right, so we talked. I just briefly mentioned your background at the beginning and the tie that your ties to Aquaforest. But I think the way I want to handle this conversation is let's just talk about kind of like your natural progression in terms of a reef keeper. Talk about your current tank, your methods. How you like to keep the tank. And I think it's just going to organically morph into what you're using in terms of products and equipment, and we can kind of dive deeper. I know there's a lot of folks out there that are Aquaforest product users, so I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions for you there, Aaron,
Yep.
about that stuff. So we can kind of play it that way. I don't know, man. Just give us a little background in terms of your journey and as a reef keeper and how you've kind of come to your current state in terms of as a hobbyist and as a professional in the reef keeping business.
I think like for so many of us, we got into the hobby either young through freshwater or through seeing, an ocean somewhere and caught the bug. My bug happened with that, but it's slightly different. So my father has been keeping reef tanks my whole life. And so my first aquarium was sitting in front of my dad's aquarium and really just seeing, the brown tanks of the past, of the early 80s and what that had to entail. It was my TV. And, one of my most vivid memories was going to preschool and show and tell, and my dad would bring in his Fijian blue starfish to show and tell in this bucket, and everyone had the chance to touch it. And it was like, the little touch tank. And for me, that was, I'd say, like the bug that bit me. And I wouldn't know it at the time, but that was the thing that both brought me closer to my dad and has all these years in our reef tanks, but also to the hobby to understand how a marine environment works and how it's so unique and different than any other environment. So growing up, always had different aquariums, freshwater, saltwater, in the house. At one point, in high school, I was working at a pet shop, and I was splitting my time between the reptile section, where I used to breed poison arrow frogs and tree frogs and all that kind of stuff, but then also in the aquatic side. And so understanding how different environments coexist was interesting to me. So I spent my time in high school learning and doing that. And when I had the chance to go to university in Hawaii, literally my backyard was the ocean. And so I kept a 75-gallon aquarium on my patio on the lanai. Wow. And everything that I collected would come from the ocean, put in the tank, and I put it all back. I'd rotate it every couple of months. And I never lost a single fish in that. But what it taught me, which is just how interesting our ecologies are, and even now today, how much different the environment is that we try to keep a sterile reef tank. And I think we'll come back to that in a little bit and some learnings I've had recently. But the ocean is a lot dirtier than we imagine it to be. We talk about marine snow, right? But I spent every day outriggering in the water, being in the water, and just seeing all the particulates and just how much the reef and the fish were thriving in Hawaii. Just as an example, the Alawai Canal, which separates the Honolulu, Waikiki area from like the rest of the island of Oahu, you see Moorish idols swimming in almost fresh water with yellow tangs and such. And what was the interesting learning was just they were there because of the diet. The algae that were there, they were going in and eating because they grew in much more abundant in that brackish water than they did in the open ocean water, where there's so many more species of tangs like chomping away, which I later use that information in keeping my own tanks. But being able to catch Moorish idols in yellow tanks and keep them in a tank, I observed them and spent all this intimate time just seeing how they thrived, to be able to now today keep some of those more difficult species and share that information with others.
So when was like your first like real reef tank that you kept and were maintaining?
University was my first solo standalone outside of my parents' care type of aquarium. Up until then, I'd be helping my dad with his various aquariums. But yeah, university was my first time being able to keep tanks. And then since then, I've always had aquariums of various sizes, from like little Pico nano tanks all the way through now to my Aquaforest Ocean Guard 268 gallons.
Yeah, sounds like you've gone big.
And I wish I could go bigger. It's funny, like looking at your two tanks, it's like big is nice, and now I come for a greater appreciation for deeper tanks. I think we all love looking at our tanks in that side profile and really just enjoying the depth. I admire folks who have the width and space to do that, because I think a 3x3 by 30-inch cube would be an awesome tank to have.
So yeah, I want to get into the equipment and stuff like that. But you put together a few videos for me of the display tank and the equipment. Let me while we're kind of talking about your display tank, let me show the display tank you just talked about. So which model is it again?
So I have the Aquaforest Ocean Guard 980. So it's basically 6x2 by 2. It's at 980 liters, 256 gallons, all-in system. It's the newest of the lines by Aquaforest. It came out about 18 months ago or so, and it came out more around the world and then has migrated into the US a little bit later than that. And now with our partnership with BRS is continuing to grow in popularity and in interest. One of the reasons that's contributing to that is just the way that it's built. Like the stand comes pre-assembled and there's a certificate behind it of just to the weight tolerance that it would have. And by European and global standards, it's one of the only aquariums in the market that has a pre-built stand, and its ability to hold not only the weight of the aquarium but so much more. And in fact, for my tank, it took 4 of us just to be able to get it in place, and it was an 8-people job to be able to get the tank off the floor, and onto the stand. So again, it's built with 19 mil, so 3/4 inch Pinkerton glass, which is like an OptiClear, super ultra clear glass that weighs a ton.
3/4 inch glass. That's pretty heavy duty.
All around, yeah. It's built like a beast.
Yeah. So that's similar to like Starfire glass, low iron glass.
It's a low iron glass. It's actually a higher transmissency and resistance than Starfire. But the company Pinkerton is the organization who makes and manufactures the glass for Aquaforest, and all of the Aquaforest aquariums are built on site in Poland, as well as all the stands, and they come in a crate that's stacked on top of each other. So the tank, depending on the size, but the tank and stand are built into one another, allowing you to get it basically. Couple of people there, more people, flip the thing over, and then you can stack it on top of each other.
So talk to me about, is there any customizability, or is it pretty much like there's different models of tanks and stands that you can purchase, kind of like cookie cutter types of stuff with different options? Or is it, do you have like the option for external overflow? I couldn't tell if that was an external overflow or not. Or do you have an option for Euro bracing? That sort of thing.
Yeah, right now the current model, and I hate to use the word cookie cutter because I would say it's not a cookie, but there's defined sizes for the aquarium. So that there's 5 different sizes and colors that you can choose from. And what's unique about the colors is the removable panels. So it's the only stand in the market that allows you to take off the doors and the side panels and have them interchangeable. So if your decor changes in the house, you can swap them out.
Cool.
So I have white and gray on mine. So, I'm able to have a bit of splash of color and diversity on that, as opposed to just straight black, white, or gray. So it's pretty unique in that regard. Currently, the overflow is inside of the aquarium, and maybe watching the video, you guys can see that. We are exploring options to have an external overflow, as well as options for Euro bracing and peninsulas. But because of the certification that the stand has, any changes done to the aquarium mean that the certification needs to be redone, and the B31 needs to be reapproved. So it's a little bit of a lengthy process on that, but
Gotcha.
That's what it currently is.
Reef Keeper comments, the plumbing on the Ocean Guard is so nice. Took me about 10 minutes to plumb it. Very heavy duty PVC. So just so we're in the loop, what kind of is it, like all Schedule 80 plumbing? And
yeah. Thank you for that, Phil. It's all Schedule 80 plumbing, and it's oversized for the system. And so one of the things that we took into account, being an Ocean Guard, and the concept behind Ocean Guard is that as a company, to do everything possible to have it a safe, secure system in your home, right? Because there's a lot of water weight in there. So anything that could be done to make sure that it was resistant to things. So plumbing is one of the things, and you think about the overflow size of the holes. So the decision was made to have larger overflow openings, so that we can control, I call it the snail crusher, but it's the valve, the control valve for it, to get ultra precision flow. And by having a larger diameter hole within the glass, it's a lot quieter. So you get much better turnaround time. And there's and Phil would have seen this as well, a buoy that floats up and down inside of the overflow box as a silencer. So you can really dial that in for folks who want an ultra quiet tank, with a silencer that moves up and down, and that precision overflow and emergency to basically have that thing just hum silently. So using Schedule 80, it's thicker, larger hole diameters between the main drain and the overflows, both the emergency and the 2 flows going up, make it for a much quieter system.
So the way it works is if you wanted to pick up one of these tanks, you just order through BRS and it gets shipped from Poland, or does BRS actually have some in their warehouse?
BRS gets them in stock, so we're sending them on an almost monthly basis, but they get a couple of containers at a time. So yeah, you can go onto BRS's website and choose they have it set by color, so you can choose by tank size and color and go through that process, and regularly being sent over to them.
That's really cool, man, because all my tanks are custom built tanks.
Yeah.
And that's because I like, external overflow boxes. I like the Euro bracing, and I haven't found any, pre-built tanks with those sorts of options. So that'd be kind of cool if you guys can kind of crack that nut and be able to offer that sort of thing. And I also, you mentioned, width or depth, whatever you want to call it, of a tank.
Yeah.
And I love, wide tanks, so my 187 gallon tank, that's 5 foot long, but it's 30 inches wide and 24 inches tall.
Yeah.
And my Peninsula tank is 6 foot long by 36 inches wide and 20 inches tall. It's such a cool, dimension. So I think, the more you have in terms of that, that option with the wider tanks, I think the better.
It definitely helps. One of the funny things on wider tanks, and I'm sure you experienced that, is getting through doorways.
Yep.
Right? There's a standard doorway width that.
That's why I got 20. That's why I got a 20-inch tall tank, because turn it on the side.
You can turn it around. Exactly. Yeah. So although those are factored into that, and one of the things that we're always trying to do is just get feedback. Like as Phil setting up this tank, getting feedback from him and everyone else who's set up an Ocean Guard. The company wants to learn from users. We are all reefers ourselves. Sever's also been in the hobby for 25 years and has a lot of tremendous knowledge. And so we just believe the importance of getting user feedback. And, the growing momentum for Euro bracing over rimless is something that is starting to come back as people are rethinking, wave patterns and movement in a tank. So, it's just natural being able to manufacture them, in-house. And I should have sent you the video, but, we have a massive warehouse that was built, so we could accommodate making, the world's demand of these aquariums, which is pretty cool to be able to do it in-house.
Yeah, Reef Keeper says the starter package is unreal, comes with just about everything you need to get started, and then some very nice touch rock, sand, bacteria test kit. So really, there's rock and sand and bacteria that's included in the starter kit.
Yeah, so the starter pack, as you read, has everything that a reefer would need. And, as a brand, we're trying to be something for everyone. So if you're first-time hobbyist or, wanting the tank, your first tank, you may not know what you need. So we try to take out some of that guesswork in that starter pack. And if you've been in the hobby long enough, you may use some of that stuff, and that's great. But we really just wanted to give everyone that head start to move forward. And one of the things that Phil will soon to appreciate is the live rock itself is actually made by composite of life biofilm. And that is a live media source that has bacteria already on it. We use the same media to make the rock, and basically we're able to compress it together to make these man-made shapes, these arches, these plateaus. And we're working on a finger rock system. And he'll find that both bacteria population and that film area will happen really quickly, and coralline will just encrust on it far faster than using a dry rock.
So the bacteria will become active once water hits the bacteria. Is that how it works?
So on the rock itself, there's no bacteria on that. The same product that the rock is made from, this life biofill.
Oh, okay.
This guy here is all of that. It's like a pumice type material, and basically it's soaked inside of bacteria vats for 3 months or longer, allowing the bacteria to grow on there. So you can not do an instant tank,
right,
but it will significantly help to both cycle and create biodiversity.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I've done both. I've had a lot better experiences starting tanks with live rock versus dry rock. Now, do you
Sure.
recommend adding additional nitrifying bacteria to a brand new tank, or?
Yeah, so like when I had mine, I had a previous tank that I put bacteria and different media in bags in the sump and such. And when I was initially setting up the tank, I took the media reactors that we can show the video of the sump, and I actually put them right inside of the aquarium. I took a power head and I fed it directly into the aquarium and figured all of the bacteria that rock had by just letting it blow through, and then I increased the flow rate, would faster populate or cross-pollinate all the other rock in the aquarium. It didn't look pretty for a while, but it definitely did the job in terms of being able to seed the rock with existing bacteria.
So in terms of the sump that I'm looking at there, because I'm showing your equipment video, is that an Aquaforest sump?
So it's also an Aquaforest sump, and so that comes as part of the kit there, where you get the tank, the stand, and the sump all in one system there. So you can see as you're panning through there, the Aquaforest logo and branding on that as well. And I covered up the ATO box, which is a massive ATO box, just to keep some of the residual light so algae didn't form in there. But yeah, 100% acrylic sump as well.
And it looks very clean. It looks like a very. It almost looked like it was PVC to me, but it's actually an acrylic sump, or is it PVC?
Sorry, it is
PVC.
PVC. Yeah, PVC and acrylic.
So PVC kind of like in terms of the frame, and then acrylic panels.
Correct. Exactly.
Very nice. Very nice. So let's talk about your lights, because there's some very interesting things going on with your lights. One, I've got the Giesemann Spectra fixture. I've got two 24-inch Giesemann Spectra fixtures over my my tank, and I'm running Halides and T5s in those in those fixtures. So you got something else going on there.
So I went with a I guess you could say a ultimate hybrid, and I know you and I have talked about this in time past. I had LEDs before, and they were fantastic lights. I really liked them. But I missed the growth that Halides gave me, and so I reached out to Giesemann in Germany and had them custom make this light for me. And
how long ago was this?
And a year and a half ago.
They're not selling those fixtures anymore in the U.S. from what I recall,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, it's they're all custom made to order, and so I was able to talk to Oliver, their marketing guy, and he was awesome about it. And to be able to have that custom built for me was super cool, because what I didn't want, and I'm pretty OCD, as you could tell about some of the matching of some of my equipment. I didn't want a light that was shorter than the tank.
Right.
So and it's 1800, so that's just under 7. It's like 71 inches, and so I wanted to have a light that was also 1800. And a lot of the other ones didn't come in that size, and I wanted the color to match. So my OCD propelled me to get something custom done. And so when they were able to do a polar white option in that, and the variable lights, so I have both options for a 250 and 400 within the ballast, or within the light unit itself and ballast. I jumped on that. So then I was like, well, I missed also the LED pop, and so I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And they sold another strip light, and so when I initially set up the tank, I put their strip light on it, and it was nice, as a kind of supplemental, but not as a punch light. And so I took that off, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? So at that point, it was Halides and T5. And it was okay.
Hey, that's not a bad combo, though. You can't go wrong with Halides and T5s. But you know what? It's all about your personal choice and what you like. So that's what's cool about this hobby.
Well, yeah, and there's no right or wrong. And one of my pet peeves was capturing pictures with my phone of the tank. And I don't want to say that using my smartphone was the driver to get Halides, but it certainly influenced it. Because now I can just take my iPhone, and when the halides are on, just capture that video like you saw, and that's 14K, the Giesemann halides on there, and it looks nice. It's no editing, you can tell, no color editing on that picture at all. By comparison, I think I also sent you with the other supplemental light that I added, which was the G6s.
So I'm showing that right now. We got basically, I think the halides are on without the radions, and now we've just turned to the blue. So that's what are you running with the? Yeah.
So what I wanted then was to have the best of all worlds. And so the punch of daylight growth with the halides, but then the beauty of looking at the tank and some of the bioluminescence phosphorus that was happening as well. So I added 2 XR30s on top between the metal halides. So there's a mesh there that for ventilation. So that's when I added the 2 XR30s, and then 2 XR15s on the side, being able to penetrate on the sides into my my hammer torch Euphyllia garden down below. And that to me is, I think, a really nice combination. So my photo schedule is I have 4.5 hours of halide, I have 1 hour just T5, and then I have 4 hours of the T5 and the T5 and the G6s running the WWC schedule. So I go a nice crisp white to an ultra blue white light for the other half of the day.
You know, we'll look for everybody, right? Ghouls is wondering what halide bulb you're using.
So these are the Giesman, I think they're called the blues. They may be called the corals, but they're the 14.5 Kelvin unit.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I did a modification of my Giesman Spectras. You know, I basically I had them wired to originally, and I think they came this way to I had dual HQI sunlight supply ballasts, which were pretty much the same type of ballast as the old PFO HQI ballast, because I like to run 400 watt 20K radium bulbs, and that PFO ballast was a great ballast for overdriving that bulb to kind of produce a real crisp white look. And so I was running those sunlight supply ballasts and overdriving the bulbs, but I had issues. After a few weeks, those ballasts would crap out. I don't know if it was the ballast or the bulb. I was reading something someplace about the fact that the newer radium bulbs can't handle being overdriven like the older bulbs. Is that something you?
I read the same, and in fact, I first started overdriving and I lost a lot of performance. So I actually stopped overdriving the bulbs. And I'm sorry for those of you who have never used the halides and don't know this, but
that was like gold to have like the PFO magnetic ballast and overdriving bulbs. That was the thing to do.
Yeah, but now I find in this, it's not effective to overdrive. Putting it on either that straight 250 or the 400, because I was playing around with both sets of bulbs. I actually got a better, brighter light out of it. So I did not overdrive in it, and now I'm not overdriving the ballasts.
Have you measured PAR under those lights?
Oh yeah, I get stupid PAR. Like the PAR at the bottom of my sand is like 400.
Is that with the radions as well as the halides going and T5s?
So. Yeah, so I matched the PAR level, so the halides and the radions they're the same intensity. So regardless of what light system is on, they're both producing the same. So 385 is the basic baseline of the sand in the middle. It tapers off a little bit, and at the top of the 100. So basically between 380 and 700 is where I can get corals, and then it's just a matter of placing them to where they're happy. And I'd be remiss to say it hasn't caused some challenges. And you and I were talking about this briefly, is nutrients. One of the things I forgot, having run halides before, is just how much different it actually has an impact on the system, and specifically on pH. My pH is naturally higher because of the halides. And then 2 is just how much extra PAR is in there, how much faster the corals are absorbing nutrients. So I'm dosing nitrates and phosphates and amino acids like more than I would ever imagine. And I go through a 2.2 DKH swing. That's my daily consumption.
Wow.
And so, and again, the tank is new. You guys could see it in that picture. Like, these are not massive colonies right now, but between both systems of lighting, my nutrient uptake is pretty incredible.
I'm showing the video again of the display tank. It looks awesome. Aaron, how old is the tank itself?
The tank in its current form is just under, I'd say it's about 10 months. I had a battle of Uranima and lost everything, and then I had a battle of a velvet and lost some very precious fish as well. So as you can see, it's now pretty much a coral tank as opposed to a reef tank.
Oh yeah, there's not a lot of fish. I don't see any fish in there.
Yeah, so that's been an experiment in there. So I have 3 tangs. I have a purple tang, a yellow-eyed coal tang from Hawaii, and a white a bristletooth tail tang, a 6-line wrasse, a pair of clowns, and a chromis in there. So from a fish bioload perspective, it isn't much at all. But what I have as an offset to that is the craziest polyp extension that you'd ever see. Nothing is nipping at it.
Nothing.
It's like the corals are just doing their thing. And so I was on another live stream and I was talking about like, what is a reef tank? How do we define a reef tank? Is it something that has fish and corals as a thriving piece of the ocean, or is it something else? And so this was done as an experiment when I lost all my fish from velvet and I had these guys in quarantine from my old system. Is what if I just put them in, and how would the tank react differently? And what I've learned is this few fish in this size of tank does not produce enough waste to keep the bioload at check for the rate of coral growth. And so I'm having to supplement with different food for the fish, phosphates and nitrates, amino acids on a daily basis, just to keep stuff detectable.
So what you're basically saying is that the corals are really consuming a lot of the nitrates and the phosphates in the system. So you're doing a lot of dosing. So it seems like you've got a pretty good, well balanced tank. Because you know, one thing I noticed, you had the Paxbellum arid algae reactor, and the other thing I noticed is you don't have any problematic algae in the tank.
Yeah, so that is for a couple of things. I keep a high magnesium, so I keep my magnesium between 380 and 1380 and 1400. So obviously that helps on that. But I also have 6 abalone in there, the tropical abalone from Unique Corals, and those guys will go around stuff. They're so delicate around the corals, and they just chomp stuff down. But having low phosphates, so that's my problem. Algae doesn't really grow. So the Paxbellum, it doesn't turn on anymore because I have such low phosphate. Like, I'm excited if I get a 0.02 reading. Like normally it's like 0.01, and that's after 20-25 ml of phosphates a day.
Wow. Yeah, I'm dosing a lot of phosphates in one of my systems. I'm using a different product. I'm using Brightwell's Neophos, and I'm dosing about 30 mLs of that in my my Peninsula tank. That's a bare bottom, SPS dominant tank. And then in my other tank, which I just did a major redo on, my halide lit tank, the 187 gallon tank, I had been dosing about the same amount of phosphates and a good amount of nitrates, but I've had some algae issues with that tank. And so it's a delicate balance, right? You got to try to find that delicate balance in terms of when you're getting phosphate and nitrate readings that are close to near zero. Well, if you got the problematic algae in the tank, that stuff is sucking it up, right? So what are you supposed to do?
Well, and at the same time, I'm also increasing my potassium levels as well. And so finding that hairline balance between incrementally raising the potassium level as well as phosphates, like if I'm not observant in the tank, I know that's a recipe for disaster. So, my philosophy is I love technology, I love gadgets, but I also love my eyes, and I spend time, and I tell this to everyone. Look at your tank, spend time with it, become intimate with your aquarium. The more you do that, your corals will tell you if something's not right. And so just being able to see what's my extension of different corals lets me know that I'm pushing things too fast and I need to dial it back a little bit. And so that tug of war that I'm having right now is raising the potassium. And so for reference, my potassium is 420 right now. I'm trying to get it up to around 450. And so I'm slowly increasing that while also getting that right balance of having some detectable phosphates in there.
So Great Bearded Reef is asking a question. Any experience of the abalone eating bryopsis?
I wish. You know, they are pretty varied in their diets. Like I have noticed that they picked on things that I wouldn't have expected. But in my experience with these 6 that I have not seen them to go after it, unfortunately. Maybe if it's small and just little tufts of it, but yeah.
Perhaps this is a tough one. You know, that's there's not a lot of things that will eat it. Maybe you get lucky with a rabbitfish that would eat Bryopsis, but
Yeah.
you know, I think I generally try to. I find like Bryopsis is more of a larger issue in terms of just finding that right balance with nutrient control. You know, and I think you know when you see Bryopsis, you're going to probably see other stuff popping up, bubble algae and
Yep.
maybe some cyano.
Yeah, you know, I one of the things that I like to think about is the tank as a system. And so, you know, when I looked at how do we create a more balanced, you know, ecology, is being able to look at. So I'm periodically running Ozone. I have a 80-watt Pentair UV, and I'm dosing the Aquaforest Life Source. You know, I go through 2 bags a month. And I put it in a container, and you may have saw it in the sump in the bottom left side that's there. And I'm a firm believer in being able to create a robust biological ecology or system in the aquarium, knowing that things are dynamic. And I think that's something we forget, is we look so much at the macro side of how's our coral doing, that I don't know if we often spend enough time thinking about, you know, at the microscopic level, what are we adding to it? And I'm not just talking about like, you know, stuff in a bottle, but you know, how are we feeding our pods? How are we looking at the small stuff in our system and know what that has in the order of magnitude to feed our fish, to feed our corals and such like that. And so,
Yeah, no.
yeah, it's something I spend a lot of time, you know, geeking out over.
What are your thoughts in terms of you know, Bryopsis? A lot of folks swear by Fluconazole. You know, I've used Fluconazole in the past, and it did get rid of the Bryopsis, but it did come back a few months later. Maybe it hitchhiked in again on a frag plug or something. I don't know, but what worries me about Fluconazole is the collateral damage that it could have on other bacteria in that tank, and I'm not sure we fully understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a powerful enough microscope to do a longitudinal test on that. You know, I'd love it if somebody did, or you know, a lab, or you know, the folks at BRS could do a study on that. But I've had mixed success. Sometimes it's worked, and other times it didn't. And the collateral damage has been a collapsing of my you know, microflora and fauna. So I've now got to the point, if the problem is that big, just, you know, try to get the rock out, cut the coral off, and start over. I know that sounds dramatic on that, but sometimes some of those more drastic measures are a much easier way in the long run to be able to, you know, to think of the tank. And one of the things that, and I saw, you know, Phil setting up this rock, and others, you know, who are in the chat, is having a modular rock system. And what I mean by that is the ability to just change out a single rock or a single structure if something's problematic on there, as opposed to having to change out the entire scape. And you know, that's kind of my push-pull about the negative aquascapes right now, is it's all glued into one. It's hard to take a piece out if it's all glued into one, if you got a problem. And so like when you saw my scape, the right structure is a single unit. So that's kind of, it forms up in a couple different shelves. But the big left one, that's actually 6 independent pieces. So if something happens on one of those structures, or I want to change something, change my mind, I can easily lift up that big arch, and everything underneath that is completely modular. And I did it on that one because of weight. I couldn't lift up a whole structure and put it in and out.
Yeah, the more mature the corals get, the harder it's going to be. But yeah, that's a great option to have.
And this is something like, we've been in the hobby long enough. These are things that we've learned, right? And you know, part of the reason why I do these videos is to be able to share that information with others. Is, you know, don't necessarily plan the tank of what it's going to look like today, but work backwards from 5 years. Like when those corals are big and things are happening, like how are you going to get in there and maintain your aquascape and challenges? And you know, that's one of the reasons why I love how Abe has all of his corals on those plugs. Like it's unbelievable, and it's such an ingenious. I've tried it. It's not really worked for me. But
same with me. I've tried it too, and it didn't really work.
but I applaud his methods for that, and I think that there's a lot of foresight, and you can see that his experience come through in using that method.
Yeah, no, I tried to do the same thing with when I rebooted my 187-gallon tank, and my mistake was not drilling big enough holes. I should have just drilled big enough holes to have the butt of frag plug stick in it. That would have been easier for me to do that.
So I don't know if you guys noticed there when you saw that. So you didn't see a lot of stuff glued in, and the reason being is because I'm actually moving in 2 months, and knowing that
oh no, you're moving that tank in 2 months. Ah,
yeah,
that sucks.
So, but I knew that, but I knew that that was happening. So the decisions I made in the rock and the placement was intentional, so that things are modular. So if you noticed a lot of those coral plugs, I actually built using Aquaforest the stone fix. That's the mud. That's the concrete mix, and I made all these little frag plugs, and I put the corals in that and let them grow out of that. So when I move and reset up the tank, then I can just glue it to where I want. But it gives me this ability to put stuff around the tank now in practice, if you will, until after I move and reset it up.
So do you have like this whole move planned out, man? I'm not, you know, I would not be digging that situation if it was me, because I've had mixed results trying to move a mature reef tank. It was early on in my reef keeping career, but that's a tough thing to do, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part of the reason why there's only so few fish in there right now. That makes sense. Right? Because I do have a couple 40 breeders that I plan on using, and a couple troughs that I'm going to put some of the stuff in, but it's inevitable I'm going to lose something. I know that. I'm going to try as much as possible to take out the rock and coral, set it up in parallel, then move the tank over, in a day with some help. But yeah, it's going to be a pain. I contemplated just getting another tank and then just transferring it to the other one and just selling this one. I honestly thought about that.
Have you thought about kind of trying to rehome the corals and whatnot with somebody else, and then kind of like get the whole tank set up and regrouped, and then kind of like make a call back on the corals?
It's possible. I mean, I have the ability in the new house to set it all you're
gonna be at the new house in parallel with being at the old house. Oh, okay,
exactly.
Good. Okay.
So I have some overlap in on that. But yeah, the design of then the aquascape, the corals. I did knowing that I'd be moving, and so that's why stuff doesn't look as permanent as an established tank, and things kind of look a little out of place in some places. But that's why.
So I want to get back to a question that Ghouls asked. How are you testing ICP? Are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm regularly ICP testing. I send it to Poland and using the Aquaforest lab there to test. I also do some other testing here, ICP test, and I have the Trident in place, and I have a whole slew of test kits that I use as well. And so I'm again pretty methodical. I have my Trident testing 8 times a day on its things, and I'm testing every day manually the nitrates and phosphate. Well, phosphates I'm checking 4 times a day.
Really, you're that religious about the phosphates, huh?
Well, because I'm trying to get them up.
Yeah. What are you using? What are you using for a test kit in phosphate?
So I'm using the Aquaforest test kit on that, and I'm cross-referencing against the HANA, both the ppm and the ppb, and so I'm using them to kind of triangulate between them.
And how do those values compare to like when you do ICP tests, through Aquaforest? How far off is the ICP, or how far off are the? I guess you would call them hobby grade test kits in terms of what you're using.
Yeah, hobby grade, yes. So what I try to do is collect the same water at the same time. Yep. So I will collect the water, like the same sample, and I will test it with my hobby kits. I'll write down those variables and the time, and I'll make a note in my logbook that I'm sending out with this water, and then when I get the results back, and I get them back within 10 days. So it's pretty quick, because the most time is the transport. Right. To getting the tested is like a day, but the transport is what usually takes a little bit longer these days. And then I will go back and see, and there's often a discrepancy in that, and user error, a bubble, in your home hobbyist test kits, or is the cuvette clean, or is the glass tube scratchers free. Although those things have a little indications of variance, I'm just looking at the trends, and I kind of just plot that against and see overall with that sample of water, like what do I need to change? And of late, I've been using some of the Component Pro just as a baseline, which is a three-part alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium with the nutrients and trace elements in that. And then adding on top of that the lab line where I'm seeing deficiencies in certain things. So whether that be strontium, potassium, iron, cobalt, and manganese, like those other things where I want to specifically get a coral color punch, or that I'm seeing that absorption is just not where absorption is too fast. I need to supplement it with other things.
So for those of us not as familiar with the Aquaforest ICP, can you just kind of give us the lowdown in terms of how that might be different than other ICP tests out there?
Honestly, it's no different, and the beauty behind it is if anyone has used the Aquaforest salt, every batch of salt has the web address. You can go in, you can see every batch that's tested. So it'll go through all the the major and minor trace elements, as well as your calcium alkalinity and all that. So for anyone who's used an ICP, it'll look really almost the exact same. It's on a website and stuff. So if you've used the Trident method or any of the others APIs, it's the same in terms of what you're really looking at.
How much do you have to dose traces in terms of if you're using the Aquaforest salt, you're doing the Aquaforest ICP testing? What's your kind of routine every month? In terms of traces and making sure that they're where they need to be.
So I was working with the new product, which is the Reef Salt Plus and the hybrid salt, until I had my phosphate and nitrate issues, and then I went back to just the Reef Salt, and so that is without the probiotics, which is to help consume some of the nitrates and phosphates. So that is my baseline salt. I'm adding the Components Pro. I'm up to 346 ml a day of those. So it basically is a three-part. And so that's what I'm adding as a three-part. And if I need to, I'll adjust my alkalinity and calcium, because it does vary slightly depending on how fast I'm getting coral growth, where before I want to change my three-part, I will substitute in some of those other additives as well.
So 346 mLs all together with the three-part, or each part?
Each part.
Oh, wow.
And I have calc on there as well. So when I said that I'm going through 2.2 DKH points a day, I go through 5 liters of the Components Pro every 14 and a half days. And so we talk about monthly testing and like this, I'm doing it on a daily and weekly. In my logbook, keeping track of this stuff, in part so I make sure that I have enough inventory on hand, but also because I'm tracking it against the growth and absorption of my corals.
I'm just looking at some of the questions here in the chat, and I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. So, all right, Cockwasser. You mentioned Cockwasser.
Yep.
I'll get back to the chat here in a second. But Cockwasser, what are you doing in terms of Cockwasser? You got a caulk stirrer?
Yeah, so I have the Avast K1 connected to a Versa single head doser on that, and I'm dosing through that almost 7 liters a day through that, which is my evaporation point, and so that's what I'm using as a baseline, and then the three-part on top of that, because I was just going through so much three-part, I needed to offset it a little bit cheaper, and so adding the calc on that helped. I will be adding back online a calcium reactor as well. So hopefully that'll help as well. And in terms of what I was using, so in some of my earlier videos, I talked about adding pure marble as my media source. So I didn't use coral frags. I was using pure marble and substituting that with just trace elements and magnesium in my degassing chamber. And I was able to get super stable results on that, with running a little bit lower of internal pH, 6.3 to 6.4, versus the coral frags where you can 6.5, 6.6. But I was able to buffer my effluent enough to get it where I wasn't getting that much of a pH shift in the tank. What
is your pH range at this point?
My nighttime pH is 8.3. My daytime goes up to 8.6, 8.7. My peak time of day is roughly 8:30 p.m. At the height of the photo period. My lights turn off at 9:45. And lately, that's been right around 8.7.
That is a very high elevated pH, but that also, really kind of feeds into that coral growth.
That, and I keep my my specific gravity, between 35 and 36, so 1.25, 1.26. So again, not overly elevated, but on the slightly higher side, also contributing to that too.
And you're also using a CO2 scrubber?
CO2 scrubber, and that's what you see on top of my DIY takeaway lid on the protein skimmer. So I take all the criticism on that. So yeah, because I couldn't find a lid that would work for the Delua skimmer. So I just got a takeaway container, drilled a hole in it, duct taped it down, and that goes to the Atlas Duo from that BRS sells, and that thing's a beast. So all of those things in combination, plus the Components Pro have a buffering agent for pH, helps me to keep my pH up. So I don't have a problem with that, which I'm lucky for.
Well, I guess if you go to a calcium reactor, then that pH will slip a little bit, but I'm sure that it's not going to go down. I mean, if you're 8.3 to 8.6, then 8.1 to 8.4 or whatever it might drop down to. That ain't too shabby.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. Eventually I want to take off the calc stirrer on that as well. But what I like about it is it keeps the ionic balance. So even if the 3-part goes slightly out for whatever reason of absorption, I know that 6 liters or 7 liters of calc going into the system is keeping an ionic stability.
Rob, upstate New York, white duct tape, priceless. Yeah, where do you get white duct tape?
I got it at Lowe's.
Yeah. Wow, I have to look into that, man. I got a whole bunch of. I got black Gorilla tape, and it's like.
Yeah, if you can, I'll send you some. So that's the funny thing I mentioned about my OCD-ness and how I try to color code everything. It's that vein of my existence, that black lid on top of the skimmer. But it works, and so until I can find another option, that's what I go with.
So I know in the information you passed along to me about your system that you had kind of a list of some upcoming equipment additions and changes. We talked about the calcium reactor, but I also see on this list a Ozone reactor. You dabble with Ozone?
Well, so consulting with Ozotech on that, it's something that I've seen the benefits of running Ozone, and anyone who's been in the hobby long enough has probably used it or aware of it. The folks that are newer in the hobby, maybe a little bit less. But it gives ultra clear water. Like if you watch any of Devin Reef Dude's videos, you'll see that ultra clear water that you get from it. And that's a plus for me. But the other piece that I particularly like is it neutralizes the coral toxicity between corals. So you can more tightly compact corals together without their chemical warfare attacking each other. And so that's the other reason why I particularly like using it on the system. With the caveat is I got 2 young kids. So my wife did not want me using Ozone, even though the safety levels are in place for using it. She didn't want the risk factor. So I was running a secondary skimmer with carbon on top, carbon on the bottom, and it was fine. I made the decision to take it off until I could have a reactor in place that I knew would remove some of that residual ozone. So been talking with the folks over at GeoReef. Geo's been awesome, and so I'm doing some partnerships with him to test out just how effective his unit is at removing the residual ozone from the water as it goes through his 2-part chamber. And so I'll be doing a video and talking about that soon. And the early testing are really promising. So I'm hopeful to be able to get that back on the system because it's a night and day difference.
Wow. Interesting. Do you also run activated carbon and UV on your system as well? Or?
Yes. So I do have a UV, the Pentair 80-watt unit going, and that I have on 24/7, and I have it set to actually a really slow flow rate. So it's not quite algae and it's not quite bacteria. It's like it's in the middle of that. So I'm hoping to catch a bit of both. But as a system that it's a beast. It's like 4.5 feet long. It's a mammoth of a thing to hide behind the tank, which is why I didn't even put it on that list because I forgot about it. But yeah, so running that's running 24/7. In terms of carbon, so I have the 2 cylinders you may have seen in the sump, the reactor. So one of them has the life biofill, and every now and again I'll fill up the other one with carbon. Again, because I'm not running ozone right now, I just put it in just as a clear up the water.
Yeah.
But alternatively, I was using the ozone for a half hour a day, and that would keep things super clear and an elevated ORP.
Folks, just a reminder: if you want to ask Aaron any specific questions about Aquaforest, go for it. Just put it in the chat, and we'll Aaron's looking at the chat too, so we can certainly address those questions. I know there's a few questions still floating around out there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I saw a couple here about what's up with that mud.
Yeah, I saw sure that. I'm like trying to put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, what are they talking about mud? That's something I gotta
The product is Aquaforest Life Source, and so it is a mud that is collected from a remote island in Fiji. Basically, divers go down with buckets, fill up the buckets with the mud in underwater, so it's not exposed to air, and then it gets sent to Poland for processing. And then so when you get it, it is a biologically alive media source with flora and fauna. I've had snails and stuff in there, and little crabs and such, and skeletons of certain things. So, but it's a live, biologically enriched product or source. So some of the issues that, and I'm just going to point it out because they keep being brought up, is the impact that it has on impellers and magnetism and iron levels. So Fiji is part of the Ring of Fire. It's in the middle of the Ring of Fire, and the Ring of Fire is made of volcanoes. And so there is basalt, and there was a big hoopla last year about life source causing some issues. And so I spent a lot of time digging into that. And again, I can be completely transparent on this. And looking at it, we found that there was some basalt in there, and basalt is a magnetic material. By weight, it's like 5 to 13%. So it has a magnetism charge. It will connect to a magnet. It's not damaging to a reef tank. It is natural. It's part of nature, and so it's something that is in there. As I said, I use two 1 liter bags of it a month in my tank, and I haven't had the problems on impellers and such. I do dose it. I keep it in the containers in the sump versus pouring it in. I just because, and I can come back to this in a second, but I run a 5 micron filter mesh sock, and so if I put it in the tank, it just causes a muck, literally. So, but that's how I use it. And so when people are asking about it, oh, is it going to damage this and that? It does have I'll call them metallic because it's basalt, and basalt has a charge to it, and so it can happen. But we've not experienced people having difficulties or damaging aquariums because of that.
So nothing pops up on the ICP test that might be indicative, indicating the basalt.
Yeah, because by weight, it's like between 5 and 14%, and I don't remember the chemical formula. I looked it up for Phil the other day actually, and it's by weight, it's a tiny amount, but if you've got a strong magnet, it's something that it could be drawn to. And so people were talking about run a magnet through it, the bag and such. What you're pulling out there is basalt. It's not iron. It's pieces of volcanic material called basalt.
Gotcha. Question from Eduardo Meza. Can you explain a little bit about Aquaforest ABEV and the difference between them, and also power?
The power elixir.
Yeah. I don't understand.
Yeah. So
okay. Yeah.
I have as one of my favorite products here. Yeah, which is the power elixir. And so I'll start with that one. So the power elixir is an amino acid regimen. It does not need to be refrigerated. So unlike some of the other products that you can only keep out for a day or two, this you can leave out, put it on it. It's designed for a dosing pump. It does have that same bright yellowy B complex vitamin to it, so there's some familiarity to that. But it's been designed to be an enriched amino acid source of long chain fatty acids for your reef aquarium. And so for me, I have it dosed throughout the day. Some people find it's better in their tanks if they dose it when the lights are off, so morning and evening. so they don't get the nutrient spike during the day. Again, I have the opposite problem, so I want it during the day. But that's how that product is. His question about the EV is looking at some of the specific components of that. So those were designed as products that increase either vitality or vitamins of the aquarium. So that was an older product that we created. It was originally brought out as for individuals. Now we're going to be offering it as a pack system. So someone can buy just the one pack of that and be able to put it in their fridge and get all the benefits from that. Alternatively, people are now switching over to using the Power Elixir because it's just one thing that they can put onto a dosing pump as opposed to eyedropping a few drops per day or a couple times a week.
How careful do you have to be about potentially overdosing like an amino acid product like that? Is that and if you do, what could potentially be some of the side effects?
Yeah, I'd say regardless of brand, it's something that you never want to just dump in any company's solution into your tank. You want to slowly and incrementally have a plan for it, because you're basically changing the chemistry by adding in this case like an amino acid to it. That's a whole lot of food source that your system has to absorb or take out or use in some way. So I always tell people, start with half the recipe or the dosage and then build up from there. Most manufacturers are pretty conservative on that, but you want to do what's right for your system and start conservatively and build up over time.
Is that something?
So if you don't, so the flip side, if you don't, you're going to get algae breakouts. You're going to have cloudy water. You're going to have issues with your filtration, because not the product is bad, but because you added it too fast into your system and your system wasn't able to metabolize it at a rate that you were putting it in.
Right. So problematic algae could be a key indicator that you're perhaps being a little heavy-handed with the dosing.
Yeah, and again, like, say like an amino acid, which is often one of those things that people have problematic algae that comes. They'll either dose it at the wrong time or the time of the day where their tank is not absorbing, right? So your tank is most active and alive when the lights are on. So if you want it to be absorbed without having a spike in your system, put it on when the lights are on or earlier in your photo period, so it can be absorbed throughout the day. If you're adding in at night when your blues are pumping, and then you go and do a test an hour later, you're going to show an elevated level. It's natural. It's not being absorbed into the system that fast. So again, connecting some of the dots of the things that we do helps us to keep a more balanced system.
Speaking of coral nutrition and amino acids, another thing I see on your list is the Pacific Sun phytoplankton reactor. Talk to us about phytoplankton and the reactor.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm excited to dabble around with. It'll be my first time using a phytoplankton reactor, but going back to that feeding of the microflora and fauna in your tank, I'm adding bottled phytoplankton from Aquaforest now, and I'm seeing that the corals are absorbing it, my gorgonias are absorbing it. And this is like, in a bottle form. And I thought, well, if I can add it in a live form where phytoplankton and rotifers, I'm just giving that much more small foods to small things that feed on that in a healthier, more dynamic way, so that as they mature and the rest of the food chain eats it, everything else is better for it. So this is going to be a fun experiment. Pacific Sun is also from Poland, and I'm excited to be trying both their phyto reactor. My previous calcium reactor was from them. This is one that's significantly larger that's going to go on the tank next.
I'm doing the same type of experiment. I'm going to give a shout out to Dong Zo, who's been on the show several times. I think the last time I had Dong on, I was grilling him about live phyto, and so I grilled a lot. I asked him a lot of questions on the show, and then I went back and forth with him, after the show. So he did me a solid, sent me some live phyto, and I got a little do-it-yourself setup going.
Nice.
So
nice. Yeah. I thought about doing it in the whole milk jar container, the brewing ones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's nice, but I need to have this on display. So I need to up my game a little bit. So
I have no room for anything. And I mean, I've got like this very nice finished basement downstairs where I've got 2 display tanks in, but then I've got like my sump room, which has got all my my sumps and my equipment and all the ugly stuff, the wires, and it's not pretty. But I literally have run out of space in that room.
If I recall, you have a pool table that I think can be moved.
Yeah. You know how expensive it was to move that pool table, because I had to. That pool table was actually in the spot where the Peninsula tank was in.
Yeah,
I might have told this story before on this show, but I think it cost me like $1,000 to have like some company come in and move that pool table so I could put that Peninsula tank into the other side of the room. Because they got to like actually re-level the thing and the slate and all that stuff, and it might have been $1,200. I don't know. It was crazy money.
But if you need space, at least you have that.
But to your point, it's not going to be a do-it-yourself thing. It's not going to look good in a nice finished room.
That's right. And because my tank is part of a lot of different videos, I wanted to have the equipment that looks just as nice, and so I'm gonna have some fun with it. Ideally, I actually want zooplankton. But I don't know where I can source live zooplankton, so I have to experiment with phytoplankton first, get some chops in on that, and then see if I can source some zooplankton, because that to me is a hypothesis of a holy grail for the aquarium.
So back to lighting. I see Reef the Sea Forever is talking about pulling the trigger on the AI blade. I saw somebody else talking about the AI blade. How close do you kind of pay attention to all the different lighting options out there?
Yeah, I mean, I like to geek out on that stuff. I think they're pretty cool. I've seen some streams on that recently and checking out the products. I think they're nice. I think their form factor is beautiful. I think some of their charts and stuff look good. I've yet to see how they grow coral. I'm sure they will, but what's it like on an aquarium is something that I've yet to really see. But I think that they've done a good job of incorporating a beautiful form factor.
Yeah, I haven't. I have to go check it out. I might have seen it, but I haven't. I can't recall what it looks like. But yeah, it's interesting. There's just so many options out there for lighting these days in terms of LEDs. I think there's a lot of folks out there like myself that, and you that still love the halides and the performance of that and the look of the halides, but there's also like a big number of folks that like the hybrid lighting solutions in terms of what you're doing, and And
I think there's no right or wrong. Everyone has their own goal in mind, and what looks good to them. For me, I wanted a good shimmer, so a high shimmer light that wasn't a disco effect was important to me. I wanted stuff that would both grow coral at a sizable rate and speed, as well as be aesthetically appeasing to my family. And so, I had all these things that in play that went into my lighting decision. And, right now, I think it looks a little clumsy. When it's not on film, I have a thing in front that blocks it so my kids don't get blinded by all the light.
Little canopy.
Yeah, they're little kids, so when they look up, I don't want them blinded. Yeah. So, I'm looking at some canopies and hoods and such for it, but
there's some cool floating canopies that looks pretty smart.
Yes, so some of those, and I have I forgot which size it is, but I have a aluminum frame behind it that I can just mount it to as well. I think it's 60-60 or 80-80, whatever it is. I can mount it to as well to have it adjustable. So these are just things that I'm looking at in the new house to be able to put it in there.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about is like your maintenance routine. So in terms of looking at your setup and the the Aquaforest tank and the stand and the sump and all the equipment in there, it looks like it's a very clean setup. You talked about your OCD and all that stuff, and this is a compliment. It shows.
Thank you.
It looks a hell of a lot better than some of my stuff, but. So in terms of ease of maintenance with that kind of setup that you got there, how are you set up to do your weekly maintenance, and what are kind of like the key things you do in terms of maintaining that tank?
Yeah, so the first thing that I have, and I talked about this before, is looking at the tank. So every night when I put my kids to bed, from basically 9 to 9:45 is my dedicated tank time. And so that's what I'm looking at the corals, and that's what I have my magnifying glass out. That's when I have like all of the things in to go nitty gritty on the tank with my photo look in from the top thing and all of that jazz. And that's when I really just dedicate that 45 minutes to like check out the tank and really observe what corals are doing. The rest of the day, I'm swamped with other stuff. So that's my dedicated tank time. In terms of other testing, so that's when I also do some of my other daily tests. I test in the morning before the kids get up, and then I manually test then in the evening as well, and then use the automated systems during the day. In terms of other maintenance to it, so I have the couple level sensors in my ATO and in the sump. You may have seen them in the video. So that keeps me on point to when I need to top up my my ATO. It's a 20-gallon or 23-gallon reservoir. So I basically top it up about every 8 days or so. But with the level sensor, I can monitor that. I clean out the skimmer cup basically once a week, check out all the fittings and stuff. I do every day clean out my 5 ml mesh filter sock, and that's a labor of love.
That is a very fine filter sock.
Yeah, and it catches just about everything, and as a result, my skimmer doesn't have to work too hard, which is also kind of nice from a cleanliness perspective, and going to the recirculating CO2 scrubber. But I do that daily, and it's a pain. I've yet to find a filter roller that I can find that fine of a micron. Normally 50 is as small as they'd go. So for now, that's what I'm using.
What happens when you go on vacation? You got your tank sitters doing that?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought it up. So when I was away for the holiday, I took it off.
Yeah.
And while I was away, my skimmer also died. And I had, you would think that was terrible. I had nutrients.
Oh, there you go. Solve the problem.
So my learning on that was I was keeping the tank too clean. Earlier we talked about dirty water in the ocean. I was keeping my tank too clean with a 5 micron that enough stuff was being caught daily that I was not keeping the tank as dirty as it could be. So now I've taken out the mesh sock. My sump, it looks a little dirty on the bottom. I don't like it. My skimmer is now kind of working. I'm trying to get that resolved. But I've got nutrients. And so it's a nice learning for me that to balance out clarity and pulling out, whether it be from a mesh sock or filter roller, and how much stuff are we keeping in our water, and are we running our water too dirty? And I think the answer to that is we keep our tanks too clean, especially SPS.
Yeah, so I've got 2 Royal Exclusive Dreambox sumps, and on those dream boxes, I have actually 10 nylon filter socks. And when I got them, they range from, I think the first row was like 800 micron, and it went all the way down to 100 micron. And they did such a great job in terms of catching anything that was coming through there, and they were clogging up. The lower micron ones were clogging up more than I can keep up with in terms of I usually do my maintenance once a week. So I'll shoot I'll take the filter socks out and shoot them with a garden hose, clean them out, and all that stuff. I needed to do that more often. So finally, I just said, screw it. Yeah. I'm going to use all 800 micron filter socks, and so there's less being filtered out, but I think it also kind of helps keep the tank a little bit more nutrient rich.
Yeah, and it's some of the things that I think we take for granted, those with filter socks and rollers, it's pulling out so much, which is great, right? But it comes at a cost. And so that to me was my Christmas learning with the tank. I came back and, the glass had, a little bit of algae on it. And I was like, ooh, what's this? What happened? And I had the cameras on the tank, and I, obviously using, the Neptune Apex. So I was able to log in and check remotely. And I saw, there was some stuff going on, and I came back and I had polyp extension like I hadn't seen, and so the corals were definitely happier having 0.03 phosphates.
Yeah, a little different. Water changes. How often? How much?
So I do a 20% water change every 2 weeks, just religiously. That's just the way that the system goes. I do have sand in there, which is something that I hadn't done for a long time. I had a lot of movement in there previously, and so it didn't have sand. But The Aquaforest sand is a aragonite, ultra white sand, and it's dense. It's a flat little disc, and I'm able to have 2 of the Neptune waves in the back blowing forward, and I have 2 of the Panta-Ray 42 Pros on the side blowing across. And I'm able to keep sand in there, and it's a nice look. But I do not gravel siphon. I have sand sifting stars and crabs in there, and I decided on this to not go the the filter siphon cleaning method.
Yeah, every sand bed that I've had, I've never done any real maintenance on it. I've always had, you know, whether it's Nassarius snails. I've got a lot of tiger tail cucumbers in my current display with sand in there, and I think they do a great job. They just keep multiplying. I don't know how they, you know, they're just kind of like big ones all of a sudden turn into like 3 small ones like overnight. I don't know what's their what do you call it? I don't know what the word is.
I think they're asexual, but yeah, they produce pretty quickly. And you know, I was concerned that, you know, the cat litter box, you know, thing of you know, and we'll see when I move what it's like, and if I just put new sand or keep that in.
Yeah, you might want to just replace that sand bed. That's there could be some nastiness in a sand bed for sure, an old sand bed.
And you know, again, it's under a year old, so it's not that old, but it may be easier just to put new sand in there. But and I've liked the look, surprisingly, of actually having some sand in there, and not having to gravel siphon takes, you know, it's a 6-foot tank, so it's helped as well to reduce some of the time. But I have a 40-gallon brute that I mix the water in. I have a return pump. I have an L1 on the tank as my return, and I have for my water changes an L2. And so I'm able to just basically do a water change in 20 minutes on the tank, where it pulls out, I flip the switch over with the plumbing, and I fill it back up, and you know, 20 minutes later, the tank has had a, you know, a 40-gallon water change.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar type of setup with my systems. I just have I use my return pumps to pump water out of the sump, and then I have pumps that pump it back in from the saltwater mixing vats that I use. So yes, when you can kind of set it up that way and make water changes really easy, then it's not such a big deal.
You're more inclined to do it. And I think like anything in this hobby, the easier we can make it, the more inclined that we're going to stay on top of it. And I think that's what happens. We are in the hobby for a while, we get lazy on it. And it's like, oh, tomorrow, next day, and things slip. And so the easier we can make things, definitely the better it is. And I'm appreciative that Aquaforest has a lot of products that really do make it easy to maintain and keep some stability.
Did we miss anything in the chat in terms of questions about Aquaforest products? I know we talked about the mud, and yeah, I mean, I know we talked a lot about what you've been using, and it's a lot of the Aquaforest products. Anything new in the pipeline for Aquaforest that you can share with us?
So I mentioned about the tanks as something that we're looking to explore on that. Again, you know, it's a long timeline, and there's a lot of processes in place to get certifications and stuff. But, you know, we're listening to the market, and, you know, people are interested in, you know, expanding into some other options. There's a need for that. So
yeah, folks, folks, what do you want from Aquaforest? Put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Let me know. You know, that's one thing. The other thing is building out the freshwater line, which is something that, you know, when you read it in the description, Aquaforest was started as a freshwater company, you know, really focusing on the plants and aquatics. So building that up in the U.S. from the freshwater side, and, you know, I know not a lot of reefers also keep freshwater tanks now, but by volume, you know, there's 4x freshwater keepers to marine in the hobby. So really just trying to be able to make sure that we can service their needs as well. So that's going to be a big push in the year ahead, and also just, you know, continuing to grow the relationship with BRS and making sure that if people are looking for products, you know, that we can deliver it. And the best way to do that, if you see some of the products that, you know, I'm using or others are using, and you see that it's not available, reach out to you know, BRS and ask them, hey, you know, can you bring in the CO2 scrubber? And some folks on the stream have done that, and some of the other products that, you know, unless customers are asking for it, you know, there may not be a lot of interest in it, or the brand may not know that there's interest from the community.
So the BRS is the exclusive supplier of Aquaforest products in the U.S.?
In the U.S., yep.
Yep, okay. Reef Keeper question, should life biofill be changed out periodically or just let it ride?
So that's a yes and question. So yes, it can be left in there. We do recommend changing out between 10 and 30% every 3 months, just to diversify the bacteria. So what will end up happening is inside of that, a certain bacteria strain will become dominant and basically eat all the other ones over time. So by cycling out some of that, you're basically recharging the biological diversity and helping to keep that homeostasis of bacteria in there.
Got it. Reef Seafer, let's see his reef tank. We've already showed your reef tank twice there, Aaron.
Yeah,
show it again. I'll show it again. What the hell?
You can show it again. I'm sorry that I'm not sitting in front of it. My son isn't feeling so well. I didn't want to subject you all to him screaming. So,
hey, talk to us about the corals in the tank, man. I see some classic stuff. I see Tyree Red Dragon. I see you got a nice little torch garden there you talked about before, and see an orange digitata. Is that an ATL 4-star digi?
Yeah, so I like a lot of the classic stuff. I think there's a lot of people who are chasing the newest, latest coral, and I've got some of those in there as well. You can't see because of the halides on that shot, where it's a lot of the white corals behind in there at the moment. But under the blues, you can really see all those white stuff popping. But I like to have a diversity of corals. I don't like just one single species. It is predominantly a SPS tank, but you see some of the euphyllias, and I don't know if you can see in the video, but I have a Fiji yellow leather as well in there, and that Gargonia was actually one of my dad's first corals.
Oh, cool!
And so you probably all wonder, why is it such front and center in the tank? And it's because it's one of his original corals, and so that has huge sentimental value to me, which is why it gets prime real estate.
Awesome. I see you got a Milk Stylo in the back there. That's like a showpiece coral, if you ask me, and it's like a it's a very not expensive coral that you could pick up, and it's a gorgeous coral, I think.
Yeah, I threw that guy in the tank, and it was a tiny 2-prong little frag, and in 10 months that's what it's grown, and it gets about 650 par where it is. So, it, as you can see, it's kind of taken over that spot.
So, dude, you picked up some corals from me a while ago, and there was a shipping snafu, right? And how many days was it like sitting there? Wasn't it like sitting in like the UPS customer center right next to where you live or something? And
yeah. So literally, it was like 15 minutes from my house, and I wasn't able to go and get it. They couldn't find it.
Yeah, they couldn't find it. It was like bizarre.
Yeah. It was. They said they went to the front of it, but it was in the back, and it was such a mess. But the corals, they survived. They look great, and you can probably see them in the video there. They they're happy as. So it's a testament to you and how not only them, but I know you've been progressing your methods of shipping. Quality shipping definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, I should have asked you that before the show, because if the corals like crapped out, then I would have looked like pretty stupid asking that question. But I'm glad they made it. Yeah, I have stepped up my pretty much kind of like right after that incident. I was like, you know what, screw it. I mean, UPS has like dropped the ball on me a few times. I need to like really up my game in terms of shipping, and I've talked about this before, but now I've started to ship the bags with oxygen, activated carbon. So, if there is a delay, a couple of days, 3 days or whatnot, then the likelihood is those corals should make it no problem.
That the sad reality is, I think that's kind of the norm these days, is there's going to be delays. So I really appreciate you stepping up your game and doing that. And I definitely, and I hope those of you who are watching this will appreciate and go to your shop and buy some awesome frags as well, because they were amazing, and they continue to thrive in my tank. So a little plug, go buy some corals.
Thanks, man. Hey, thank you, Gregory, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. That's awesome in terms of I hate the part about shipping corals. I don't know why. I don't know why I just read that coming under my breath. But the Reef Keeper says, I hate that part about shipping corals. Worst thing ever is seeing delay or UPS or FedEx tracking. Yes.
It is, and I was lucky and spoiled that Phil was able to bring stuff right to me at Wrap, and thank you for that.
There you go.
So
there you go.
It definitely helps, and the better we can get at shipping, the happier the corals will be.
All right, Aaron, what have we missed here? What have we missed that you want to talk about? Anything?
I think we've gone over so much. I think that the thing is a lot of folks are not familiar with Aquaforest as a product. It's been in the US for 8 years, but really in the last year, we've seen it with the relationship with BRS really accelerate. The thing that I want folks just to take away with is we've got products for whatever your experience level is, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. There's something for you, and to spend some time poking around the aquaforest.eu website. Reach out to me, Sever, the rest of the team. Ask questions, and we'll happily help answer them for you. I'm pretty active, answering my questions on Instagram. And let's have a conversation and figure it out, some stuff for your needs. But really, want to make sure that we dispel some of that phobia that it's just for the advanced reefer, because we hear that a lot. But we got stuff for everyone, and people aren't sure what products that they should get. There's some guides on the website that will help depending on what your goal is. These set of products will help for you. But again, any specific questions, let me know. The folks at BRS, we've been some training with them, and your local LFS, around the country is going to be carrying some stuff as well. So you got a lot of points of entry to ask some questions.
All right, last question. Ghouls is asking, do you guys have anything for cyano?
We do have some bacteria enablers that will help to consume. One of the things that I actually found is the best in quotes was the Life Biosource and the Life Biofill. By adding the two of them in, basically adding bacteria to the system, helps to outcompete cyanobacteria. And usually, and I think you've talked about this before, cyano is typically the result of no nutrients, right? And so the bottoming out of that, the cyanobacteria can take off. So just adding some nutrients and biodiversity back into the tank will help to reestablish that stability. So Life Source and Life Biofill are two of the simplest products that you could help get rid of.
And those are natural bacteria-based products. Those are not chemicals we're talking about using the footing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right, Aaron. Listen, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. And
absolutely.
Sorry about your son not feeling top notch and under the weather. Hopefully it gets better real quick.
Thank you. Yeah. If you have me on again, I'll be in front of the tank. So then
cool.
You can see the
tank.
All
right. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, folks, that'll do it for this show. I want to thank Aaron again for being on the live stream tonight. I also want to thank Bulk Reef Supply and Ozotech Marine for being sponsors of the live stream and supporting the show. I also want to thank all you folks out there for tuning in and watching and contributing via the chat. Finally, a big thank you to Paul, who is the moderator as well as the president of the Boston Reefer Society. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to this hobby. I mean that. I also want to let you folks know that all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. Speaking of corals there, Aaron, my next live stream is not going to be a Rappin with ReefBum. It's going to be a live coral show this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, January 8th. So I'm going to have some really sweet SPS frags up for grabs. So hope you folks will join me for that. My next Rappin With ReefBum live stream will be next Thursday, January 12th at 7 p.m. with Hunter Hammond, the RAS guy. So that should be another great show. You want to check out the full upcoming schedule of Rappin With ReefBum in terms of the guests, please visit reefbum.com under the YouTube section. Until then, be safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.